I'll just do a quick introduction. We're joined by Amy Gash from Lady Elliot Island. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
And Andy Ridley from Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef.
Hi, how are you?
Also known for the founder of Earth Hour. We're also joined by Simon Mustoe from the founder of Wild Diaries.
Hello.
So it's great to have you all on board, and thank you for coming in at this time of the evening, which is wonderful to chat to our people that have tuned in to listen to us. Might start quickly with a bit of housekeeping. So all microphones are muted for the people watching, but we do encourage you to put your questions that you might have in the Q&A box down the bottom of the screen. And we'll be monitoring that as we go through, and we'll address any questions as we go through the interview, through the evening. Any excess questions, we might come back to you personally directly afterwards, after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, so if you have to jump out halfway through or you want to refer a friend to it later, then please, we'll be sending you a link to the recording. Simon will send that out afterwards. As we're all very well aware, we've been living through some rather different times in the last few months, changing our world, changing how we operate, particularly in the tourism industry. We're still eagerly awaiting the official go-ahead to get back into our tourism. There's slowly but surely seeing things open up and change in different states. And the biggest thing we're waiting for is when we can actually move around our country and ultimately then bring our international guests back into Australia. So we've got lots to look forward to. But in the meanwhile, I might jump across to Amy. Amy, if you just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of information about Lady Elliot Island.
Sure. I'm Amy from Lady Elliot Island. We're situated on the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef, about 80 kilometres northeast of Bundaberg, to put that in perspective for our watchers, not listeners. So we are a family-run and operated business. We've been working out of Lady Elliot Island for many, many years, and we've been the leaseholders since 2005. So Lady Elliot Island is a beautiful remote coral cave, and it's home for turtles behind me, which you can see, home of the manta ray, and it's got 1,200 different species of marine life and fish, and it's absolutely stunning place to snorkel and dive and explore. And we have a fantastic array of eco initiatives. We are an eco resort, and sustainability and eco tourism is the core of our business. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Andy, would you like to give us a little brief introduction about the Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef?
Yeah, no worries. So nice to see you. I'm Andy, based up in Cairns, and I'm part of the team at Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef. And we're a network of lots of different organisations and people working to conserve the Great Barrier Reef. And I'm very lucky to have worked with Amy and particularly her dad on Lady Elliot Island a few times. So nice to see you, Amy.
Yes.
I think that's one thing. The Great Barrier Reef, as we know, is an exceptionally long reef along the Queensland coast. So it does connect people over great distances over one common interest, which is fantastic. And maybe, Andy, you were part of the Live from Oz presentation last weekend that Tourism Australia put on, and it was fantastic to see you talking underwater, which I thought was quite impressive, but that must have been a really different experience. Can you talk a little bit about that whole process?
Yeah, so we, as you say, we're part of this really big exercise to try and bring Australia to life for people stuck in lockdowns, not just in Australia, but all over the world. And so we were filming off Cairns on Moore Reef, which is a really interesting reef. It's got a stunning wall on the eastern kind of corner, and then a lagoon behind it. And then normally you would go out there, and where we were at least, and there would be, it's a pontoon site. So you would have 150, 200 people who would go out and visit it every day. But at the moment, of course, the last few weeks, no one's there at all. So it's really, it was really amazing to be there. And we were using this very unique mask, which allows you to talk and film underwater and talk whilst you're underwater. Obviously, for my mates, the one place they don't have to listen to me is normally underwater. And so I managed to get around that, which is kind of good. But for me, but not for them. But no, it was amazing. And we were able to, I hope we were able to sort of bring it alive for people. But we hope to be doing a lot more of that kind of stuff in the coming years. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the technology now is incredible what we can actually do in tourism. So I might just lead into Amy. Amy, during the lockdown, you've been utilising technology to do some virtual tours over at Lady Elliot. Do you want to tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, that's just something that we've started when we closed the resort back in late March. We wanted to make sure that we kept our audience online engaged and the Great Barrier Reef at the forefront of everyone's minds for when they can start traveling again. So we kind of put together a plan of virtual tours, and it was what was the hot topic at the time. And I guess we just kind of started with just some short tours on what normally people would do on the island. So we would do our flora and fauna, our discovery tours, reef walks. We've done a couple of virtual snorkels. And recently, just last week, we shared a beautiful one about our red-tailed tropic birds that are very, very rare to see. And Lady Elliot's one of the only, I think, public access island on the Great Barrier Reef where you can see those beautiful birds. So yeah, it's been really fun to make and great to share our Master Reef Guides stories and to keep the public engaged with us online.
So are these available on your website or through another platform?
Yeah, you can find them through our Instagram TV, and they will be up on our website very, very shortly.
Okay, so armchair travel can continue into the future, which is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess the key thing is we want people to think about travel, and when we are available to get back travelling. So one of the questions we did have is, when will Lady Elliot be open?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so we did close back in late March, and we've been in a caretaker mode, looking after the resort, keeping an eye on our wildlife for the last 50 days. And after the announcement and the roadmap presented from the Queensland government, we'll be reopening on the 13th of June, which is very exciting. It'll be slightly different to how we previously operated, but everything will be in accordance to the social distancing guidelines and making sure that we put the health and safety of our guests and our team first, whilst you still have a fantastic Great Barrier Reef experience.
Fantastic. Now, Andy, with your project, how do people get involved in the citizens of the Great Barrier Reef?
Yeah, I mean, the actual program is growing more and more all the time. But I mean, if you're, in fact, we actually have one of Amy's residents on one of our platforms at the moment. But you can go on our site. It's citizensgbr.org. We have all sorts of cool stuff. So we're doing a lot of tracking of turtles and sharks. So you can see their live tracks going around the reef right now. That's reeftracks.org. So if you want to have a quick look at that. But there's a whole load of other things you can learn. A whole load. We're actually launching this week, I hope, Oceanpedia, which will be about 200 or 1.5 minute films about different species, about coral spawning, about different animals, turtles, sharks, about bleaching, so all the conservation issues. But we ask you to sign up and become a citizen. So it doesn't matter we obviously love it if you come to the reef, fall in love with the place like we have and do. But also it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can kind of see what's going on and get more and more involved. And obviously you can follow loads of cool stuff on our social as well. The biggest thing for us though is that we think it's really critical that the Great Barrier Reef is front and center as, you know, one of the most extraordinary marine icons on the planet. Its health is really important to, it's a bellwether for the rest of our oceans. This one happens to be particularly well managed. So, if this one's, the state of this one is probably the top level in comparison to other reefs around the world. So we want people to engage as much as they can in the future of the Great Barrier Reef and not just learn more about it, not just come and visit it, but also help us keep it in a good state and help protect it for the future, which means, often, things like cutting your emissions and doing as much as you can to get to net zero in terms of carbon emissions.
Mm-hmm. I noticed on your website, I had a quick look earlier, there's quickly 6 simple actions that you can sort of take in your daily life that actually ultimately does protect our waterways and our wildlife ecosystems.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're very much of the feeling that every citizen has a role to play. And so as you become a citizen, as you say, there's 6 actions on there at the moment. That's going to grow and grow and grow. So They're very simple ones, really around material, mostly around material use. So, you know, the very obvious ones that we can all do, the plastic straws, the takeaway cups, the, you know, food waste, those kind of things. But as time goes on, as we develop Citizens, which is still a pretty new organization, still only about 3 years old, there'll be much more you can do. So we hope to launch this September, a massive citizen science project to help us survey the reef, which you can get involved with whether you're on the reef, in fact, whether you're on, hopefully on Lady Elliot Island, which you'll be very lucky if you are, but also if you're at home and you're in your bedroom in New York, you'll be able to get involved through some of the analysis piece. So I think there's a 21st century conservation revolution starting to happen around scale and how everybody can be part of what's going on. I think probably the corona pandemic has also opened our minds to what could be possible if we wanted in terms of solving some of these great issues. So Citizens is trying to lead the way as much as we can in some of this stuff.
Fantastic. Now, Amy, those turtles swimming behind you there look fantastic. Are they, can you just a little bit about their seasonality around when the turtles are on at Lady Elliot, please?
Yeah, so Lady Elliot's a really special place because we do have these turtles behind me. So these are our green juvenile turtles. They're not what we would call fully grown. They're not nesting at this stage. So they're our pretty much our resident turtles that hang around the island all year round. And this here is what we like to call Channel 1, which is in the lagoon. So you can swim about 100 metres off the beach and you're pretty much welcomed with between 5, 10, sometimes more turtles in this one little hotspot because it's a very, very popular cleaning station here behind me where the turtles, it's very critical for their health. They come in and they get cleaned by the little cleaner fish and they spend their days there. In regards to turtle seasonality on Lady Elliot, between the months of November through to January is turtle nesting, is when we have our loggerheads and our green turtles come up on the beaches and they nest. So that's a really special time of year. Lady Elliot is classified as a minor nesting site, but we do have, we can have between 10, 20, 30, 40 nests a night. And then after January, between January and about April, we have the turtle hatchlings. So that's my favourite time of year when the hatchlings are coming out of their nests and emerging and running down the beach. And that is a really special experience for everyone. The kids absolutely love it. Yep. We have fantastic guided talks with our master reef guides and our activities team that take you and experience these encounters. So you can come along and do a turtle talk with us and you'll learn about their nesting habits, what happens to the turtle's life cycle once they come out and emerge from their nests. And yeah, so it's a really special time of year.
Fantastic.
I just ask Amy, so with one of the special things about Lady Elliot, I believe for visitors, is that you do really provide a full service, don't you? So you don't just turn up on the island and you're left to yourself, but you're with people pretty much the whole time learning these things?
Yeah, that's right. Education is very, very important to us on Lady Elliot Island. So all of our tours are very, very education focused. So we have a range of free island tours that our guests can join in both day guests and overnight guests throughout the day. And these range from bird watching through to history tours, through to island flora and fauna. And then at night time through our turtle season, we have our island talks, which we run every night. So our girls are busy throughout that period of the year out there looking for turtles, but they absolutely love it because they're in their element and we get to show our guests and give them that experience, that up close and personal experience with the turtles. And yeah, it's awesome.
Is there any significant difference between the southern section of the Great Barrier Reef and the northern section of the Great Barrier Reef? Either one can answer that one.
Yeah, I might pass that one to Andy.
Sometimes a little bit colder down south, isn't it, Amy? Yeah, there are obviously differences because the reef is so long. You know, it's 2,300 kilometers, and so you will get different ranges of species. And what's the range? Is there a different range in the turtles, Amy? Or else do we get greens up there?
Well, from what I know, Lady Elliot Island on the southern end is, because we are so far out from the mainland, the nutrients in our water is very high quality, is from what I've been told, I guess, from the scientists. So that's why we have such larger megafauna coming around the island, including the manta rays and the larger sharks and the humpback whales migrating through. Yeah, and I believe coral may be slightly different in regards to soft corals to hard corals down south, warmer waters, cooler waters down south as well. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And of course, one of the differences also, which is really important at the moment, is Andy was referring earlier to zero emissions, is that your nesting areas will have a greater proportion of male turtles as well, because the cooler sands mean that you get more male hatchlings. And that's a really significant part, I think, of the green turtle ecology on the Great Barrier Reef, because it is vertically north-south oriented. You've got the full spectrum from almost entirely female populations up on some of the northern islands now, down to more male-driven populations in the south.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic to, I guess, learn about, is how the sand temperatures greatly impact the sex of the turtles, if it's going to be male or female. So I know there's a lot of projects going on along the reef where they're utilising shelters and different structures to help with cooling down the sand to, boost up that female population of turtles, so that we don't have in the future, I guess, an imbalance, which will affect the species. So yeah, there's so much going on in regards to that space.
And the big difference experience-wise, I mean, if you're out, as you said, Amy, if you go out into Lady Elliot, you need to hop on a plane, a small plane, to get out there, and it's an extraordinary visit, because you land on this tiny little runway on this island, which is, is it 100? Did you say 100? It's 100, right? 100 k's out?
Yeah, it's 80 kilometers from Bundaberg.
Yeah. If you're going out of Cairns, it's a bit different. You go on a boat for 2 hours, maybe a bit less, to the outer reef, and then if you're going on a liveaboard, you'll go up the reef, and you'll go on the ribbons or something like that. So you're right on the continental shelf as soon as you're about an hour and a half out of here. But they're very different experiences, both amazing. I mean, then it's definitely not a kind of competition. The thing I love about Lady Elliot is it feels remote, and it feels, you get in the water and you're just blown away by the diversity that's in there, and whether it's, the turtles and the sharks and the, I mean, it's an incredibly magical place. And you'll find the same up in the north. So, but they are different experiences. You're obviously up in the tropics up here, so you get that, and you're on the cusp of 2 World Heritage sites. You've got the Great Barrier Reef and you've got the Daintree rainforest. So, we're lucky enough in what we do to get to see a lot of the reef, so much of it's magical.
I've been lucky. I've been to more of the northern part of the reef than the southern, so I have to put the southern on my to-do list once I can travel again. One question that's come through is the issue around stingers. Now, do they impact Lady Elliot Island at all?
It's a really interesting question. No, we don't have stingers, as in irukandji, the marine stingers, the fatal jellyfish, on Lady Elliot Island. Due to our proximity, we are so far south, and we are so far out to sea, we don't experience those marine life. I guess the question people do pose to us is there's been irukandji stingers on Fraser Island, and we usually, from our knowledge and what we've been told from the stinger experts, is the fact that those irukandji do breed up in the estuaries in Fraser Island and wash out with the tidal movements. So we don't experience them on Lady Elliot because we don't have those estuaries as such, and they don't breed. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not a scientist, but that's from my knowledge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the one thing, we're talking about getting to Lady Elliot by light aircraft, so there's multiple launch spots from the mainland coast to get out to you guys?
Yeah, that's right. We have 4 4 departure ports with our sister company, Sierra Pacific, which our family also run and operate. So we fly directly from the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Hervey Bay and Bundaberg. So our guests can depart basically from anywhere within southeast Queensland. And from the Gold Coast, it's about an hour and a half flight, same with Brisbane, and it's only about 30 minutes, 25 minutes from Bundaberg. So you do get a beautiful scenic flight from the Gold Coast up past Surfers Paradise, over SeaWorld. You get to see the Moreton Bay region, which is absolutely beautiful. You get to see dugongs, which people don't normally even think about as in the Moreton Bay region. I couldn't count how many turtles I've seen in that Moreton Bay area, as well as little species, shovel-nose sharks and rays in that area. And then you get to head up over the Moreton Islands, North and South Stradbroke Islands, and then over the Wide Bay area, over Fraser Island, and then out to Lady Elliot. So it is a beautiful scenic flight. And then for those that travel from Hervey Bay and Bundaberg, they also get to see the Fraser Coast region. And then in the season that's coming up now, which is the humpback migrating season, it's just very exciting. We do get to see them often from the aircraft from the Gold Coast, and then you do see them very, very often from Hervey Bay, Bundaberg, because Hervey Bay is I'm pretty sure it's just listed as a world, maybe a heritage site for whales. It's a very, very significant site for whales in that region.
Yeah. And so that affords you to have day trippers as well as overnight visitors?
Yeah, so we're really lucky because of the flight time to the island, and it is quite quick. We have day trippers from all of those regions as well that can come out guided or unguided and spend the day exploring the reef if they are time poor and unable to stay overnight.
And also if they suffer from seasickness and prefer not to spend 2.5 hours on a boat.
Well, that's right. It's all different experiences though. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I'd like to ask, Andy, can I ask you your relationship with islands like Lady Elliot is obviously really, really important. How does Lady Elliot's reputation as a resort in the Great Barrier Reef, what is its reputation as a resort when it comes to conservation? Can you explain that?
Yeah, it has this guy who is the big boss there, who's quite notorious, a guy called Peter Gash, happens to be Amy's dad, and he's a wonderful human being, and I think he has led the way on some of the conservation of the Great Barrier Reef, particularly from a tourism perspective. And I was lucky enough when I first started working on this project, I got to meet Peter and I got to go out to Lady Elliot. And I'm a bit nerdy sometimes. You'd be surprised to hear. And he was able to enthrall me with his the power station that he's built on that island. And it's not a power station a bad power station. This whole place, I think it's nearly 100% is now solar and batteries. And this is really unique at the time. No one else was doing this stuff. And he rebuilt a desal plant out of bits of old bits of what was it? Some engineering thing they got out of the States or something.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
secondhand.
So he's got this whole circular economy thing going on, and but the coolest thing about Peter is if you get to go in the water with him. And actually, the last time I was down at Lady Elliot, Peter, who's quite high energy, he goes, "Oh, let's go in the water." So this is like I got there, and I had 22 hours on the island, and I spent something like 14 of those hours in the water with Pete, swimming around with looking at this and looking at these, there's amazing plate coral kind of formations, and looking at the being followed by these cheeky reef sharks that frequent one part when you swim off the thing. But the whole island's amazing, and they've got these photographs of when the island was. It's got a lighthouse on it, right, and an old lighthouse, and it's got this. You correct me when I get this all wrong, Amy, right?
No, it sounds.
They've got this lighthouse on, and of course the lighthouse keepers used to live on there, and they had goats on the island in case people were shipwrecked, and the goats had just basically cleared every piece of vegetation off this place. And over the last few years, Pete and friends have worked to revegetate this island. The story behind it in its own right's amazing. They almost used weeds to build the soil to then put the correct plants back on this island. And now when you fly over it, you would never believe the photographs, which are this cay, which is basically white and bare and quite, you know, depressing, that it used to look like. So they've just done this amazing job. But as much as Pete is a magical human being, and he is, and all the staff are fabulous, the coolest thing is when you get in the water. It is extraordinary, and you know that's, you know, a great reason why you got to go to the Great Barrier Reef. It's a bloody amazing place.
That vegetation, Amy, so I didn't realise that. So revegetated, have you seen seabirds coming back as well?
Yeah, so it's a really, really interesting story. The island was actually mined, so it is a recovering mine site in the late 1800s. The island was mined, for guano, which is basically bird poo. And it was used at the time during the Civil War for fertiliser, and also used for gunpowder, which was really interesting because it's very high in nitrate and all those sort of chemicals. So the island was stripped barren, and when it was mined, it was actually left barren, and it didn't have any vegetation after that period. And during that time, they left goats, that's what Amy's talking about, on the island, because if there was any shipwrecked sailors and anything like that, they thought it would be the opportunity, you know, for food. And so that these goats would eat any little piece of vegetation that would pop up. So the island sat barren basically for 100 years, just with a lighthouse and a couple of lighthouse keepers on the island, until about the late 1960s, when Mr. Don Adams came out and started the first tourist operation on the resort. He flew guests out for overnight stays and day tours as well, very similar to what we're doing now. And he started the revegetation program way back when in 1969. And he actually won a conservation award for his program that he started. And from that day, every subsequent leaseholder has also continued that program of revegetating the island back to its native state. So we've probably planted around over 10,000 trees in the last couple of years. And to put in perspective, since we've been closed, since the 26th of March, we've probably planted over close to 1,000 trees in that time as well, because we've had more time to do that work as well. We've had more hands on deck. So the whole purpose of the project is to eradicate any of the non-native species and plant the native species to a coral cay. So there's vegetation that's being planted there that haven't been on the island for over 100 years, which I find fascinating when I get to walk around with Jim Buck. He's the head of our revegetation program, and he's showing me plants like my most fascinating one is one called a necklace bean, and it was eradicated during the period in which the mining took place, but we recently planted it for the first time in 100 years. So that's like a really exciting story to have all that vegetation come back. And in regards to the seabirds, yes, we have seen significant growth in the seabirds coming back to the island because the vegetation is also growing, but the vegetation is also changing because we're removing the species in which they would nest, but we're seeing all different other types of species come back as well, and their population growing, and it's fantastic to see. Bird season is crazy. Sorry,
seabird population. I'm just always fascinated by the amazing link between seabird colonies and fish stocks around coral islands. There's been some work done in the South Pacific. But you can almost double the speed of the population of fish by bringing seabirds back.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so during our summer months, we can have up to 100 to 200,000 seabirds on the island, 90 to 100 different species, ranging from nesting to migrating to seabirds, all coming to take up home on Lady Elliot during that period. So it's not our home, it's theirs, really.
That's right, and as visitors we get to share these amazing places. So I think that's a good point to wind up now. We've had a half an hour session. We really want to thank you both for making the time to join us.
Thank you.
No worries.
It's been awesome, and so those watching, we welcome the opportunity to get you across to Lady Elliot Island or out onto the Great Barrier Reef in another region if that's where you're travelling. So
we
thanks,
should point
guys.
out. Caroline, we should just point out quickly that we've got, we'll follow up with everyone. We've actually got some opportunities to do that this year potentially. So
yes, we've got an itinerary put together for departure dates, hopefully in October and December, depending on interest. So we'll get that information out to you. and they include Harvey Bay, Fraser Island and Lady Elliot Island for 3 nights. So starting in the Southern Barrier Reef, and we did a session a couple of weeks ago on the Daintree region, so we can combine that with the northern section of the Great Barrier Reef if people want to go up there. So thank you again. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, and we look forward to being out travelling again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks guys. See you
Bye.
later. Bye everyone.
Bye.